Welcome to the UW Echo NAT sessions. Today is September 22nd, and I'm really excited because this is the first of our three kind of sessions on vision. We have some guest speakers, and we do have one new case to discuss, as well as seeing lots of new faces. So that makes me really excited that more individuals are coming and seeing what Echo has to offer, and I'm excited about your case today, Annie, so thanks for getting it into us. We're going to go ahead and do introductions. Can you guys see these new nameplates? Is that helpful? So at least you can see which of us here are in the room, and then the only other thing that I would ask, and it looks like everybody has done that, is just to make sure that your name on Echo comes up on the screen so that we know which site you're from. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm Canyon Hardesty, the coordinator of community education here at WIND, and currently your facilitator for this year's Echo.
My name is Wendy Alameda. I'm the project coordinator for WATER, Wyoming Assistive Technology Resources.
I'm Mary Jo Cooley-Heidecker. I'm a speech-language pathologist, audiologist, and I'm a professor in communication disorders.
My name is Darcy Regan. I'm a speech-language pathologist for WIND WATER.
Hello, I'm John Paul Harris, Wyoming AIM Project Coordinator.
Inga Milevichita. I'm a graduate assistant helping out with the research component here at ECHO.
I'm Mary Ginsel, occupational therapist, sitting in on the sessions.
I'm Pat Casey, occupational therapist and part of the first PLC. Awesome. Hey, you guys.
So Barb, we'll go to you.
Okay, I'm Barbara Locke. I'm assistive technology professional or practitioner with WATER, and I'm here in my office in Lander.
Great, thanks for connecting. Your picture came across really well today. Gail, we'll go to you.
I'm Gayleen Goose. I'm from the Goshen County School System, case manager. And I have Mary Smock, our director of SPED.
Can you, so are you just joining us via phone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to have you. Gail Bowser, our trainer, do you want to go ahead and mention your role and name?
I'm Gail Bowser. I'm the lead trainer for Project Echo, which doesn't mean I do all the trainings, but it does mean I'm the mentor for all the trainers who will be joining us this year. And I'm coming to you from my newly painted greenhouse in Oregon.
Wonderful, wonderful. Next, we'll go to some of the individual, let's go to Amy Rushforth first.
Hi, I'm Amy Rushforth. I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm working in, well, I'm working all over the state, actually. Today I'm in Pavilion.
Great, thanks for joining us. Next, we'll go to some of our WDE representatives and actually our esteemed trainers for the next three sessions. Leslie, do you want to go first?
You bet. I'm Leslie Bechtel Van Orman. I coordinate I'm a program manager for the Vision Outreach Services and am currently acting as an interim Special Programs Division Director.
Great. Thanks for joining us from your office today.
No, can you believe it? I'm not in a car.
It's great. Great. You're with us today. And Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Ozias Townsend. I'm a vision outreach consultant and one of Leslie's.
Great. And then let's go to some of our PLC members. It looks like we have Chris with us today.
Hi, I'm Chris Victor. I'm a speech pathologist in Bighorn Juan. So greetings from Burlington.
Great. Eric?
I'm Eric Freeman, Assistive Technology Strategist in Casper.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Annie. And a new, I think, face for us, right?
Yes, it is a new face. I'm Annie Bowers. I'm a speech language pathologist in Sheridan County School District number 2. and also a member of the state PLC for assistive technology. And I have with me Danielle Holler. I'll have her tell a little bit more about herself, but she has a student who is visually impaired, and so she had heard about the training and thought it was really beneficial to be here today.
Great, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm Danielle Holler, and I'm a high school resource teacher in Sheridan. And so this year I have a girl who's visually impaired, and I'm trying to get to know a little bit more about it, and I'll be going into the TBI program in January.
Great. That's awesome. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us today. Looks like we have another new member, Tricia Parkinson. Unmute her, please, JP. Hold on a second, Tricia. We need to make sure that we unmute your line. There you go.
All right, I'm Tricia Parkinson with Lincoln County School District number 2 in Afton, Wyoming. I'm a special educator and on the assistive technology team. And last year I had a visually impaired child that I worked with Leslie with, so.
Great. And you'll be joining us routinely, correct?
Yes, that is the plan.
Great. Great. Okay, did I miss everybody? Oh, Casey. How did I forget you, Casey? You're hiding in the corner of your screen, that's why.
I'm hiding. Casey Widhelm, Fremont County School District number 1 case manager. With me I have Ellen Holzman, a speech pathologist, and we will have Mike Harris, our special services director, as well as Carrie Polson, another case manager, joining us shortly.
Great. Thanks for the full house, Casey. That's great. Okay, did I miss anybody else? And then go ahead and know, I mean, if you'd like to introduce, if there are individuals who are going to come in throughout the session, let me know. We want, part of ECHO is just about the individuals who are sitting here at the table. So we want to know the virtual table as well as the physical table. But we do want to know who joins you and what their interest is, and make sure, even though we'll go ahead and mute your lines as Laura and Leslie do their presentation, we do want this to be interactive. We want people to ask questions and provide clarifications. So another way to do that, even though we'll mute your audio, is just to wave your hand at us. That kind of helps us to know that you have a question and make sure that I don't miss you. You're welcome to just go ahead and speak up too. I have no problem with that. As I said at the beginning, this will be the first of 3 presentations about vision, vision assessment, and then some low-tech tools next week. And then the following week will be some high-tech tools. And we hope we actually may have 1 or 2 case presentations on kiddos with visual challenges. So I think that that'll be exciting as well, because our experts will be on the line to be able to provide some recommendations. So I will quit talking and I will turn it over to Leslie. I believe that you are driving this didactic presentation. So we have 30 minutes on the assessment of low vision functioning.
All right, I will share my screen. All right, so we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the foundation for making decisions about what student needs are for those students who have low vision or are blind. And Laura's going to start. And we have nothing to disclose.
So our learning objectives for today are, at the conclusion of the session, participants will be able to describe general eye anatomy and summarize how deficits affect visual functioning. Participants will also gain a better understanding of assessments for students with low visions, including functional vision evaluations and functional media assessments. All right, so just to start off, just a brief overview of eye anatomy. As you can see here on our wonderful little picture, first talking about the pupil, which is the dark central middle of the iris, and the iris is the colored part of the eye. These both change sizes in order to accommodate the light that is available and what light enters the eye. The cornea is actually the clear front window of the eye, so it focuses light into it. Let's see. And then we go to the lens, which is a transparent structure inside the eye that focuses light rays onto the retina. The retina is the nerve layer that lines the back of the eye. It senses light and creates impulses that are sent through the optic nerve to the brain. The macula is the small area of the retina that contains the special light-sensitive cells. So the macula is actually what allows us to see fine detail. The vitreous is a clear jelly-like substance that fills the middle of our eye. And the optic nerve is the nerve that connects the eye to the brain. So it carries the impulses which formed by the retina, which interprets them as images. Okay, so some definitions and clarifications. A visual impairment refers to any loss of function with regard to vision. According to the World Health Organization, there are 4 levels of visual functioning. So there's normal, moderate, which is best corrected to 20/70, severe, which is best corrected to is less than 20/70 in the best eye, and blindness. Low vision is usually usable vision that exists. So it's moderate and severe from the above categories. And legally blind definition is best corrected central vision of 2200 or worse in the better eye with best correction, or a visual field of no greater than 20 degrees.
And legal blindness is really just it's a legal term that gives people some additional benefits federally. So that's why that arbitrary number is considered legally blind.
Absolutely. And the World Health Organization also talks about that blind is the inability to distinguish light from dark. So that's what you typically think of when you think of someone who is blind, even though they normally have some sort of vision remaining. All right, so retinitis pigmentosa is the name given to a group of hereditary retinal diseases, and it's characterized by progressive loss of visual field. Night blindness is also, so part of the retina is damaged. That's the part, so it's degeneration of those cells in the retina, and it presents as a slow dimming of the vision from the outside in. So as you can see in the picture, it's showing just that middle portion. So that macula that we talked about, that fine detail is still there, but the peripheral field is not. And then Stargardt's and macular degeneration. Stargardt's is actually juvenile macular degeneration, meaning that it's not brought on by aging. It's characterized by reduction of central vision with preservation of that peripheral field loss or peripheral vision. And so it takes away that macula, that part that's like fine detail that was still intact with the RP, but it presents as a either a scotoma or like a blocking of round vision of that central area. So cortical vision impairment, it's a decreased visual response due to an abnormality affecting the part of the brain responsible for sight. So the problem lies with the processing piece in the brain, and normally the vision is normal. It's that processing piece with the optic nerve and pieces in the brain. So some of the characteristics that are associated with CVI are distinct color preferences, variable level of vision loss, poor attention to visual stimuli, a delay, so they may not see as quickly, difficulty visualizing new surroundings or objects, and they may have viewing objects at a close range or at odd angles. So some of the stimulation that's helpful for children with CVI are large, high contrasted, lighted, reflected, moving objects, touch or sound to attract a child's attention. Visual materials presented very non-complex, so uncluttered and as plain as possible. Having it presented at different angles or directions is helpful. Variable light in an environment, so some children do better with a lighted toy in a dim room, so it's easier to see. Extra time for that delayed response of visual stimuli, and an avoidance of overstimulation. A great example would be looking at the background with me. There's tons of stuff in the background here, so it would be easier if we put like a whiteboard and then just me in front of it. That would be.
And we wanted to highlight a few common visual conditions that students in your schools may have. But one of the other things in our choosing these 3 different vision conditions is to reiterate back to the visual system. If you think about the visual system, it's sort of like a camera attached to a computer, and you may not be getting a clear image of the picture, but it could be because something's wrong with your camera. It could be because the lens of your camera is not clear. It could be that the cord going from your camera to the computer is damaged in some way and the image isn't getting to the brain. Or it can be something like cortical visual impairment, where the brain is the piece where the damage is located, and it's not the picture or the cord, it's the processing of that image that makes it difficult. So you can have a student with a visual impairment in your class this year and have a different student come into your classroom the next year, and the accommodations and supports that you will provide to them will be completely different. So it's a pretty complex system that we're looking at. And that's one reason that the evaluative piece of this is so important. So usually when we think about a visual condition, we think about acuity. It's what we're most familiar with, especially those of us that are wearing contacts or glasses. That's just the clarity of what someone sees. And just to give you a little background, because you often will get as your foundation for any kind of evaluation, some acuity information from the eye doctor. So this is a super rough measurement of vision. What it tells you is that what a person with typical vision sees at 200 feet, if you look at the 2200 rating where the big E is, what I can see with my contacts in, pretty typical vision at 200 feet, a person with 2200 vision would need to be 20 feet away from that. So that is, you can see that's a pretty, I don't know, blunt measurement for something that should be really much more finite. When you see those numbers, the 2200 plus 2 or 2070 minus 1, what that means, if it's 2070 minus 1, that means the person read the 2070 line. You can see that on the slide, the TOZ, but they missed one letter. So you can either have additional lines or missing a letter on a line, or seeing letters on a line that is larger. But so that's the visual acuity thing that's often the basis of the vision information. In the state of Wyoming, we have a little bit lower bar for what is visual impairment. That's 20/50 or worse in the best eye. So you can have one eye that is functioning is totally blind, and one eye that's 20/40, and you don't meet the cutoff for acuity in the state of Wyoming. So that best eye has to be at least 20/50. Or you can have a visual field of less than 20 degrees. So there's another compounding factor. And just like the image that Laura showed you of the person with the Stargardt's with the retinitis pigmentosa, their visual acuity in that very central macular area may be 20, but the field loss is so significant that they meet the definition of having a visual impairment. And then the other piece of that is just the processing, the sort of functioning at a level of visual impairment that's far greater just because of the vision processing piece. The next slide show a ton of information just for reference for people who are accessing these presentations without the added benefit of Laura and myself. But we're going to talk just a little bit about two really common vision evaluations that are done for students with visual impairments. One is the functional vision evaluation. What this assessment does, and it's typically done by an orientation and mobility specialist or a teacher for the visually impaired, but the assessment looks at how a student uses their vision to attain information. So how does their vision function? It's with a complex system like the visual system that we described earlier. you can have two students who on paper look very similar who function very differently. It's not uncommon for a parent to be told that a student will be a Braille user or will not have any useful vision, and to have that student be a print reader in the end, or vice versa. So this functional vision evaluation really tells you a lot about how a student uses their vision. It gives you a ton of information about appropriate accommodations for students. It is usually administered over multiple sessions, or should be, and it determines what the student can see at near and what size print they see most efficiently, what students see at a far distance, and what print they can see most efficiently. And it also requests input from service providers and from parents. So these assessments should be, when you get them back, should be providing information to the school team on what that acuity, the clarity of their vision is at near and distance, if there are any field loss issues, and also provide information on reading levels and reading speeds. And the other pieces that it should look at is the student sensitive to light or dependent on light? Are there color preferences they use? Do they have any color blindness or color perception challenges? And it should look at the efficiency of their eye movement. Eye preferences, looking at eye balance, determining if a student has binocular vision. And that's a pretty cool test, or one of the tests they use is really cool. It's called the stereo fly. And you put on 3D glasses and look at a 3D image of a fly, and you ask the child to grab the fly's wings. And if they pull their hands back or grab at the picture, you know that they have 3D that they're able to perceive things, they have depth perception. But if they say, "What are you talking about?" then you know that their vision is not functioning binocularly and that they are not perceiving depth. Also, visual efficiency, how efficient is the student's vision to complete useful educational tasks. This can also include eye strain. How long can a student perform visual tasks before experiencing eye strain or stressed headaches? And then it should really look at interpret what the implications of that functional vision may be on a variety of educational environments, including the classroom, but also including physical education, recess, all of these kind of school-related things, and then provide the team with recommendations. So the other vision assessment, or the other assessment related to vision, is the learning media assessment. And this sort of takes the information from the functional vision evaluation and pulls it down to a level that is more specific to how a student will learn. So that will be, are they going to be, and it looks at auditory, visual, and tactile methods of instruction and what is the most efficient for those students. It's also an assessment that helps determine input, so how students learn best, and output. So this can be Braille, it could be large print, it can be audio, and it can be a combination of them. Hopefully you're getting information from this assessment that tells you what the primary learning medium is and what a secondary and even tertiary learning medium may be for a student. So this is also going to give you more finite information about font size, about reading speeds, and give you information about attaining where that student, or specific information about the type of print, color of paper, font qualities that would be best for a student. An interesting piece about the learning media, the often shocking, is that within the Individuals with Disability Education Act, you see these on your IEP forms, there are a few areas that our legislators called out for special consideration. Those things include that's communication, that's behavior, but one of those is also the learning media of students with a visual impairment. And in the special factors section, this is the regulatory language. It says, in the case of a child who's blind or visually impaired, you must, it talks about providing instruction in Braille and the use of Braille unless the IEP team determines after an evaluation of the child's reading and writing skills, needs, and appropriate reading and writing media, including an evaluation of the child's future needs for instruction in Braille or the use of Braille, that the instruction of Braille or the use of Braille is not appropriate for the child. So that's actually in section 346 of the IDEA. So if there's a student in your school who is a child that has no vision, you probably don't need to do much of a learning media assessment may help you determine auditory or tactile media being more effective, but it's not a requirement. However, for a student with low vision who you think is going to be a print reader, a learning media assessment or an assessment of their learning media is required, or the default is teaching them Braille. So that's sort of like a very interesting loophole. You can see where some consumer groups of people with visual impairments and who are blind have really advocated for a thorough assessment. And the reason behind that is just that we have for years said, you can see okay-ish, you'll learn print, even if that child could be more efficient through the use of other media, particularly maybe Braille. And we talk a lot through the learning media assessment. We're not just seeing if a kid can see a letter and what that is, but what's going to be most efficient, because what we're shooting for is being able to consume over 100 words per minute so that you can thinking about this kid going to law school, not thinking about this kid in first grade. So that's what the special factors determine. Then our last slide is just, sorry about that, I skipped one. Our last slide is just some reference areas or references that may be interesting for you in terms of looking at vision conditions and educational resources. So that is it. Any questions for us?
Darcy, you have a question?
Actually, I have a couple questions. I thank you very much for your presentation, and I've always wondered some of the terminology within low vision and those with visual impairment. But the two vocabulary terms that come up a lot that I don't know what they mean. Well, the first one is the saccade, and then the second one is I don't know how to describe the visual threat. So you got something coming towards your face.
Yeah. Well, saccades are a searching eye movement, and it is sort of this bridging area. Like a lot more teachers for the visually impaired look at this a little bit, but the real experts on that are the OTs usually, who are able to look at how a student's eyes move when they're scanning print or searching information. And the visual threat is a reflex. So if anything moves quickly towards your face, we will all react with a blink. And you can even touch, with babies, you can just touch the bridge of their nose and they'll blink, or you can move your hand toward their face without air. You want an open hand moving toward their face, and they will naturally reflexively blink. So for students with or children with a cortical visual impairment, those are sometimes absent. So you'll actually see kids, you can touch the bridge of their nose and you get no blink reflex. You can do visual threat, or you'll do the visual threat, and then a few seconds later you'll get the blink.
Thank you.
Gail?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you taught me something important today. I think as a teacher of all kinds of kids who may or may not have visual impairments, I had never heard in all my many years of being an educator that there is such a thing as a delay in vision. I know we talk about it a lot in terms of language and generating language, but the delay in vision is a new concept for me. Can you talk just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think we're talking the visual latency piece is is that you present a stimula, or just like I was explaining with the visual threat, and the reaction to the presentation of that is delayed. And that's common with cortical visual impairment. Just you see that it's getting to the part of the brain where this person will recognize that the visual stimuli is there, but it may take a longer amount of time. And we as educators are often presenting some interesting object, and then we say they're not interested, and then we try something else and we put that away. But really, it may take that kid 20 seconds or 30 seconds or even longer to recognize and process that visual stimuli and get that information. So sometimes we eliminate the stimuli before that kid has a chance to see it. And that, there's another assessment that is specific to students with a cortical visual impairment, and that's called a CVI range. And it looks at the common areas of, areas that are common or common behaviors that we see with cortical visual impairment. And it determines if those things exist and to what extent they exist. So visual latency is a great example. You may have a student who only recognizes objects that are very familiar to them, and it may take them 20 seconds to see it. And then as that child learns to use their vision more efficiently, you'll see them moving down the range to a more efficient processing speed, and they may be able to recognize unfamiliar objects after a few seconds, or maybe have no latency in their visual processing. So that's an interesting assessment specific to students with cortical visual impairment, but it can give you critical information for all sorts of presentation information and accommodations that those students could benefit from. And CVI is one of the rare vision conditions that can improve over time because because neural pathways can be developed and improved.
Great. JP, will you unmute the line in case Goshen County may have a question?
Yes.
And then I have actually two, if nobody else has a question. Okay, so I guess one of the things that I would ask Leslie and Laura, one of the things that in our pilot last year, people asked some questions like, what kind of students should we be doing these assessments on? What are key triggers for you or educators to kind of say maybe they need some additional assessment of their vision? Is the first, we'll start with the first question. Who should have these assessments done? Who should educators be thinking about when they're?
Well, I think for any student, there's a threshold eligibility piece for students with a visual impairment, and that is that it's a medical piece from your ophthalmologist or optometrist. So they're the ones that are determining the existence of a vision condition, and they're the ones that are determining the acuity levels in the field. We can get functional vision information, but the foundation is always that medical piece for us. And for a student with a cortical visual impairment, we can determine that there's a neurological, doctors are the ones that give us the neurological foundation for that eligibility category or that disability. So I would say for any of those students who have a vision condition, then all of them should really have a functional vision evaluation and a learning media assessment. And then for students, that functional vision evaluation for students who have a cortical visual impairment it would be best to include the cortical visual impairment range.
Great. So I guess then, just so, I mean, I think most of us on the line may know how to access a functional vision assessment, but just because this is recorded and individuals will access this recording as a resource, if individuals know there's a student and who has, you know, you've received this medical knowledge, how do they go about getting a functional vision assessment? How do they do that?
People can contact our office, and we have a list of current contractors and practitioners in the state that we provide to educational agencies, so that they can find, if they don't have a teacher for the visually impaired or orientation mobility specialist on staff, then they can look at some options in terms of contracting. The other thing we do is provide them with the names of school districts that have vision staff so that they can explore the possibility of subcontracting for those assessment services through them.
Perfect, thank you. What other questions do you guys have for Laura and Leslie? I think they'll be on for some of the rest of the call, and definitely we will have them back for the next 2 sessions. But any other questions? Or Gail? JP's going to unmute your line real quick, Gail.
Thanks. This is a follow-up question. I know very little about cortical visual range assessment, and I'm wondering if you could talk real briefly about anything else that assessment might cover. It's just a whole new concept to me.
It looks at, I'm hoping I have my book here.
Oh, I didn't mean to make it a test. But
no, but this is a great resource. It's from the American Foundation for the Blind, and it's the actual approach to the assessment. But it looks at those common areas that are listed on the slide, like color preference. That's one of the common features of cortical visual impairment. And so the assessment range would assess, does the student have one single color preference, and he or she could only see one, like an object that was that single favorite color. So like maybe just a yellow ball is all that you can get a functional assessment from. Amy Rushforth and I did an assessment one time on an adult who had, the people that supported him had never seen any visual function before. And we turned the lights on in a room and broke a yellow glow stick, and he went, wow. Just thought it was, was the first thing we'd ever seen any visual reaction to. So color preference is one. Some students are more, or adults too, but individuals are more attentive, or more, it's easier for them to see an object that's moving or reflective. That's a more primitive and easy visual path than things that are stationary. Laura talked a little bit about complexity. So one single environment, one single thing against a contrasting background may be best for some people. They may not appear to see things at a distance, but it's not because of acuity. It's just because there's so much visual clutter in between that they sort of lose the ability to process those or pull out that piece of information. So there are 10 different components that are common to cortical visual impairment, and then the range sort of assesses and tracks where on this scale, from the point of being very affected to the point of almost functional vision to the point of full resolution of the visual system. And you'll see kids who the team plans thoughtful assessment-based interventions for addressing their vision loss. You'll see their visual functioning improve over time in many cases. So you'll see kids who move down that range as they attain better visual efficiency.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Amy? Hold on, JP will unmute you. There you go.
Okay, I just had one comment, and that was Christine Roman's the author of the CBI range, recommends that if you have a student that you're working with, that first of all you give that has CBI, you make sure that somebody qualified does the assessment, and then it should, like Leslie said, the educational components need to be planned around what you find out in that assessment, and then it should be repeated every 6 to 8 months, according to Dr. Roman Lancy, to keep upping the ante and building on that child's visual strengths and visual efficiencies. And I'm working with one student right now who somebody had said that his CVI was completely resolved, but no follow-up assessment had been done, which was very interesting, and I'll pursue that more as I work with this young man. But he clearly still has field issues, visual field issues, and color preferences, and highly distracted by reflective kind of things. And so his CBI clearly hadn't resolved, but he's probably like in the phase 3 and at the 7-8 range from what I've been able to tell. But anyway, so I just wanted to say that it's important to stay on top of that and keep addressing it.
And I would reiterate just building off Amy, as we so often do, but another thing I'd say is that there are a lot of kids who have neurological challenges, other neurological challenges. It's hard to imagine a kid who has whose system is impacted in any significant way in terms of neurology that doesn't have some sort of visual processing issue. We can't diagnose a cortical visual impairment, that's the doctor world, but there are 57 neural centers in your brain that are used for processing vision. It's hard to think of where your brain could have damage that it wouldn't impact that. And then you think about our students with their most significant needs, and how few of them have had this kind of assessment or have been looked at through that kind of perspective. And then we wonder why they're having additional struggles learning.
I just want to contribute on that line. I worked with a student about 2 years ago that we requested a functional visual assessment for, and it was very effective in helping the team because we learned that we needed to block things on her paper because she was a first and second grader and doing the work with everybody else, but for her, to just vision in on that, focus in on that one thing, it was just too difficult. So just by blocking the paper and even blocking some of the things up on the big screen, it really helped that student. And so those, like you're mentioning, the TBI kind of thing, this girl had a TBI as an infant. And so it was really informative, very important. I don't know if it's been repeated. I'll have to get a little worried off the side.
Hey, that's great. That's great. Amy, another comment or question?
Yeah, I had another comment. Just when you're working with students with visual impairment too, if they're having some, especially in the CBI group, if it's not identified correctly or addressed equally or sufficiently by most of the people that work with that child, and you start having behavioral issues, a lot of times the behavior is stemming from, now I see it, now I don't, this person works with me hand under hand, this person grabs me and pulls me, just a lot of inconsistency. So the team really needs to be on the same page and have the same type of supports for the student. It makes a huge, huge difference in success.
Great. Darcy?
I wondered if you had a list of seizure meds that could affect vision, or how true you find that to be.
There are a ton of medications that can affect visual function in a lot of different ways. I know that a lot of seizure medications actually cause visual hallucination, and can decrease visual function. And I would encourage, you know, as we meet students and start to support teams in working with them, we often do research for those educational teams just with a pharmaceutical desk reference about the possible side effects of the medications that they have, to see if that may be a compounding factor in the performance of that student in terms of vision function.
Great. Okay, well, these are great questions, and both Leslie and I think Laura, for one more session, will be available, and then we'll have them on hopefully for the rest of the year. So these are great questions, great things to consider. Thank you, ladies, so much for our very informative. All I saw was people taking lots and lots of notes. So that is great. And anybody who has individuals who are maybe unable to attend, or maybe you have somebody in a different district that would benefit, we will have this presentation up and it will be posted on iEcho. And you're more than welcome to go online and access it and share this information with anybody in your district or anybody across the state who would find it useful. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to go to the co-management or case presentation section of ECHO. And we have one student case presentation today brought to us by Sheridan County, ECHO ID 5038. So Annie, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and your team in Sheridan.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'd also like to introduce my partner in crime. Mary Beth Gifford is a resource teacher here with me at Sagebrush Elementary. And so she helps with some of our older students here, and so she's the case manager of the student that we'll be talking about today. So she'll have lots of important information to add. So we're very glad to have her.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. I've been in the business for about 40 years, so I've been around a while. This year I'm doing 5th grade, and usually I do 4th and 5th, but I've done all the way to K to 6 or K to 8. So this is one of the boys that I've had a little bit of trouble with, really struggling. So any advice or suggestions would be greatly appreciated.
And because we have, Annie, I'm sorry to interrupt. Welcome, Mary Beth. We're so excited to have you. I just want to remind everybody that as part of these ECHO case presentations, the information needs to be as de-identified as possible, just to make sure we're maintaining as much confidentiality as possible. And we would just ask that that everybody on the line maintain the confidentiality of the student. And Mary Beth and Annie, you guys did a great job with the materials that you provided, without including just enough information, but not too much. I don't want that to inhibit any kind of additional conversations or questions you're going to ask. So just know that we'll go back through and de-identify the recording prior to us even. Yeah.
Do you want to wait just a second until the announcements are done? Okay.
Yeah.
Chromebook on Mrs. Welch's desk. If you did, please.
Are they done? No.
All right. Thank you for being patient. All right. Student that we have today, the two main concerns that we have are reading and decoding, specifically decoding, and written, like composition of written material. He is, just to give you a little bit of background, his IEP, and he doesn't have a 504 at this time. We don't have a specific use for AT, but this year, our 3rd through 5th grade students are able to have one-to-one Chromebooks, and so we wanted to make sure that you guys knew that in case anybody had any ideas about how we can utilize those. His strengths that he has are his cognitive skills, receptive language skills, gross motor skills, his enthusiasm, auditory perception and memory, his hearing and vision, and family support. He has a tremendous amount of family support. They are an English-speaking family, heavily into 4-H, FFA,
and ranching. They do tons of stuff in the summer and over the spring, lots of activities that he's involved in, which is, I think, tremendous support for him. His primary disability category is a specific learning disability in reading and writing. So his IEP is written for reading, specifically decoding and written composition, as well as his secondary area of disability is speech and language in the area of articulation. We actually did a 3-year reevaluation not too long ago, and his language skills are average, and he does a great job with that. He is proficient or above in math, and his comprehension skills for, when material is read to him is at or above grade level. He's basic and below basic in reading and writing, which are his areas of need. Something that I think is pretty important, and I know speech therapists sometimes appreciate this, when he came in kindergarten, he was on an IEP from our child, our region child development center, and he was severely phonologically delayed. And so he has made tremendous progress in his articulation skills, phonology skills. We're actually working on only R right now, which is tremendous for him. He was highly unintelligible when he first attended school. He has other family members with reading and articulation difficulties, and sometimes written composition, excuse me. We have, Mary Beth has tried a few things within the classroom, as far as additional time, bold type for main ideas, reduced length of assignments, some different kinds of color overlay. The overlay she's used is in the color yellow with black text, oftentimes bolded, and sometimes dark blue. Approximate age or grade level of reading is at the 3rd grade level, so he's at least 2 grade levels below where he should be at this time. Again, I just want to mention that they do have one-to-one Chromebooks now, and they're using those mainly daily, I would say, that they have access to them for composition and classroom assignments, looking things up on the internet. They're learning different ways to post assignments, communicate with their teachers, and those kinds of things. Decoding and reading is his greatest difficulty. Right now he's reading level P with 85% accuracy. I wanted to read, Mary Beth had a great summary for his writing skills, which goes along with the questions that we had about his written composition. She said that the student has frequent letter-word reversals. He does not consistently sound word parts or letters correctly. He adds letters to words that do not belong. Visual discrimination of words with a computer aid better, but are still not proficient. He's able to use a T-chart for data. He can refer to text features to help compose paragraphs. He needs to verbalize thoughts first and then have assistance to get his ideas on paper. He is able to physically write words, but they are so poorly spelled, text is almost impossible to decipher even for the student. He is willing to attempt written assignments and is able with support to produce a 4-part piece containing approximately 12 sentences. And that is about it for his background.
Perfect. So what we'll go ahead and start with is just for people to, kind of think about what Annie has presented, and let's flesh out some questions that we have. We don't want to jump right into solutions. We just want to provide some clarification. I think individuals may have a couple of clarifying questions they want to ask. Start with you, Mary Jo.
So, so you're saying that his speech is pretty intelligible if he's just got R's? Is that?
At this point, yes.
And then his expressive language is average as well as his receptive?
Receptive and expressive. Receptive is higher, but they're both at, the average, right where he needs to be, age appropriate.
Everyone would get speech to text. The computer couldn't recognize some of the sounds and things, so quite a bit of the time, it's like if you have a kid with a southern accent or with a pretty significant speech difficulty, it was kind of coming out like that for him. It was kind of frustrating for him. So I did try that also.
Can I ask what program you use for speech recognition?
One he gave me, what was it?
Drag and Dictate.
It was Drag.
Drag and Dictate.
Was that on the Mac OS or was it the iPad?
It was the iPad.
Okay.
What other questions do we have? Gail? Hold on, JP, we'll unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm curious how much he has used technology for writing in the past. Has it been a useful tool for him, or has it just not been tried very much?
We have tried it, and in fact, that was one of the accommodations that I would encourage. At one point, he was using a scribe. He went beyond that. I think he needed to go on beyond that, and he was. He has made great progress. I mean, really, from where we were. But he finds it frustrating in the fact that as he looks at the keyboard, that's why we went to text, or from speech to text, because when he looks at the keyboard, all of those letters on the keyboard, he's searching them out over and over. Now he's going faster, henpecking this year, but I mean, it's just like overwhelming for all of the letters, the B's, the D's, the P's. And so it gets frustrating to him, but he is doing better with that, and he is identifying some of his errors that he gets on the page. But many times the errors have to be brought up out to him as he's decoding what he's written.
And can you tell me, like, what's a typical assignment for him? Can he write a sentence without some kind of support?
Yes.
At what?
He can write.
At what level does it become difficult?
Right. He has some difficulties, but he has great ideas. He has a hard time keeping up with his ideas and getting them decoded. And so, but he's doing it. I mean, he's come a long ways. And his words are resembling more words than they used to. It used to be, he would have no idea what it, I would say, okay, what does this say? And he'd look at it and be like, I don't know, And so he's getting better at especially beginning and ending sounds, and he's still throwing some things in there, and he's self-correcting on some of his BVs. But, he's a 5th grader at this point, so. But I should have included one of his pieces. With support, he does a nice job. He has a five paragraph response, but that's with support. But he does.
And when you say with support, does that mean with a scribe?
No.
What's the support look like?
The support looks like we talk to him about, what do you want to say? What's really supposed to go down here? We start with just words on a T-chart so that he's not overwhelmed with all of the construction of sentences and paragraphs. We do a lot of visuals, like the star ideas and the big T for the topic sentence, big C for the conclusion, those kinds of things. He's real visual, so that helps out a lot. And so we'll read through the article together, talk about it, share it, minimize it to the important topics so that he can take that idea and put it on the paper so it's not overwhelming. But that's kind of what we do.
That's great. I want that much support.
Well,
Darcy, did you have a question?
Yes. When did he first get diagnosed with SLI? Oh, not specific language impairment, but specific learning disability?
Kindergarten. We're in a small community. I had his father. He had similar things. I had his older brother, and we have the younger sister also. I think the mother had similar problems, but she was in North Dakota, so I didn't have her. They won't let me commute that far.
JP?
Yeah, so you might have answered this, and I might have seen this, but just maybe for me to better understand. When the student does create a document like a 5-paragraph response, is he able to go back and in that document, either electronically or on paper, can you go back and make corrections or see mistakes on the page and make adjustments?
He has a difficult time with that. He is actually getting better. We use a spell checker. The thing that we tried to do is, because he's so visual, we went with the shape of the word, going from that end of it. And because the sounds were not making a lot of sense for him. So I thought, well, this is perfect, because if you go in the tool section and you have the spell checker, you are looking at a visual to scrim issue. And so sometimes he gets that and sometimes he doesn't. Depends on how long the word is. And if he originally identifies that it's an error.
If he can originally identify what? I'm sorry, I missed it.
If he can originally identify that it is an error or not as he reads through it.
Oh, okay.
Actually, of course, like all of you know, the small words blow him out of the water faster than the bigger words.
Then can I follow up with that? And then have you tried word prediction at all? And does that benefit him at all?
It does. I
Okay.
haven't.
Okay, do we have any other questions before you potentially open it up to some solutions and some brainstorming? I mean, it sounds like you guys have been doing a fabulous job over the last 5 years of working to get the kiddo where he is at. So thank you so much for your enthusiasm and support, as Gail said, and for just bringing him to us to rethink about some of these pieces. Who wants to start with some suggestions? Darcy?
One thing I was curious about is just getting some baseline data with a couple of tools out there. Barb might be a little more familiar than I am, but it's the protocol for accommodations in reading and written productivity profile from the Don Johnston website. And it'll look at what kind of supports are helpful versus what he can do independently.
Hey, Joe?
So one of the questions, of course, is if Drag and Dictate's not working initially, do we have some other way or other programs that lets him get his thoughts down? And so is there other talking word processors that we could use that would also read back what he wrote?
And I've had a couple of ideas. I know JP might talk to a little bit about Drag and Dictate in a different form. The iPad version is okay. It's just not the best option. So you might explore trying the real version of Drag and Dictate and a better headset.
And you mean the real version of Drag and Dictate? What do you mean?
The software program that you can purchase. Yeah.
So just a little bit of background, I'll follow up, because it's not uncommon when we look at mobile devices in the classroom. And I was just working with some educators in Sweetwater, and there was a teacher there working with a student with the iPad and trying to do voice recognition. And it's something I usually don't recommend, but I have seen it work effectively. So it's per case basis, but usually when I look at voice recognition, I'm looking at on a PC or a Mac, a full operating system with a full application such as Dragon Naturally Speaking or Dragon Mac Dictate. And I can't remember if they changed their name up. But the difference, and also with the use of a USB headset that has a microphone boom, what you're going to get there when you go to that setup is you will start to get like that 99.9% accuracy. Now, depending on if the client or student has a speech impediment, you're not going to get that. So that's.
But just an R, I don't know.
I don't think that's going to throw it if that's.
I think it could learn.
Yes. And so the advantage of going to a full application like Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is the best on the market by far, and I can give you research on that if you need it, but is you can train the voice initially, and then also when you make corrections to text, it's training the voice profile all the time until you start to get that high accuracy level. But it's not uncommon. I mean, I have seen the iPad effectively in the classroom. It just depends on the situation when you're looking at voice recognition.
Thanks, JP. Wendy, I don't think you were done.
Okay, I was close. But my other suggestion was going to be something similar to maybe a smart pen, one of the LiveScribe pens. And as he was writing something out, it could be recording his voice as well. So then those ideas aren't lost. So if he's writing something, you know, he could be writing it on the paper, and it could be recording his ideas as well. If he has something that's, you know, a little bit longer and it takes him too long to write every word and record at the same time, maybe having that audio recording for him, he can go back and listen to it, and maybe just, you know, a sentence at a time, he could start, you know, helping him remember what his thoughts were, what he meant to say. So that might be a good idea. And the other idea I had was for a keyboard. If he's using a keyboard and he's having a hard time mapping it out, maybe putting something tactile on the keyboard. If you want to discriminate between the B, the P, and the D, maybe you know, a dot in different places, so it would help him. Oh, this is the P. He doesn't have to keep looking at that and then trying to remember, you know, which one is that. So it becomes easier.
Great. And then Barb, I saw that you had a comment, recommendation. Great.
I was typing it in the chat, but in the user settings in Dragon, you can go in and make phonetic changes to the words that an individual pronounces, how they pronounce their words, and you can do that even before you deliver the product for initial voice training, and it will significantly improve the recognition rates. So that would be less that the computer would, you know, that algorithm would have to make adjustments for.
Cool.
Mary Jo?
And still talking about writing, so have you tried Inspiration or Kidspiration? Are you familiar with that? So it lets you, especially if you could use the talking word do the speech recognition into Inspiration, it lets you use visual supports to create how these ideas connect, and then you can draw lines and add icons to it, and then turn it into a written outline that would then let him fill in from that.
Cool.
And then if I can follow up with that, is if we started looking at voice recognition with integration with literacy supports, literacy software, one, I don't want to get too specific, but if we are looking at something like that, we could look at potentially Read and Write Gold, where you have the possibility to do voice recognition within a document while using Read and Write Gold, which I believe has some supports for like balloon charts. I think I call them flow charts, if that's the right terminology, where you, the same kind of ideas you get from, the same kind of format you might get from Inspiration software. And that's kind of getting too specific, but I know with, it's, you got to find an application can do voice recognition within the literacy software as well. But that would be a good option, actually. Read and Write Gold.
Okay.
Chris, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think that's okay. Here. So can I pull it out?
Go unmute her.
Okay. Sorry, no, I just had a question following up on what Barb said when she was talking about drag and dictate and going into the user settings. And I was curious if that was just for the computer version or if that's also available in the app.
Only on the app, Barb.
Not on the app.
Just on the computer. Okay, thank you.
Because it takes huge amounts of memory, you know, when you start doing that.
Thank you.
Great question. Gail?
This is really a question more than it is a suggestion, but I hear you saying that you have a one-to-one Chromebook approach going in your school. So it seems to me like we ought to be thinking about Chromebook apps and Chromebook features more than we should be thinking about the iPad. I know that there is a full version of Read and Write Gold for the Chromebook that's available free to teachers and school programs right now, and I can send some information about that if people aren't aware of it. But so that's one resource that might be useful, and it has, as JP said, all the you write words and it reads it back to you, a lot of the outlining functions and mind mapping kinds of features in Read and Write Gold. So that might be a suggestion. What I don't know is whether there is a voice recognition feature that's built into the Chromebook system, and I wondered if anybody else did.
I'll just jump in and say we should know that, and we do have them on order. I don't think there is going to be one just based on the architecture. Chromebooks are pretty much like a web browser as your operating system, and I don't know if it's going to have a lot of those features built in, and that's something we have to assess.
Yeah, what I will tell you guys, I know that there are a couple districts, well, we know a lot of districts are going to these Chromebooks, so we've ordered several, like quite a few within Water, and we'll be doing some substantial training so we can make sure that we can provide technical assistance on those. I know that Casey and Eric and Chris, is this the truth that you guys have some experience with Chromebooks? So do you have anything to add? Or you might shoot me for asking you. Chris?
I have no experience. I know that we've ordered them in the district, but we don't have them in place yet. So I'm listening with very big ears.
Okay. Well, we will be doing, our staff is going to do quite a bit of training and trying to get some of those pieces out into the field because we know it's useful. Casey or Eric, do you want to comment, or maybe not?
I actually am looking at mine right now, and I have the Read and Write Gold for the teacher edition that they have for free. And I'm actually not finding the speech input part on it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. But at this point, I don't know if it's just the version of Chromebook I have, and so it doesn't have maybe the input or like the microphone, and I don't have a headset sitting around handy, but that's the only Google Chrome app that I know of anyway that supposedly has the speech input, but that doesn't mean anything, I suppose.
Great. Casey, any comment? If you got it, that's great.
So Casey had to leave, but I've used the Read and Write on Google Chrome, and it actually last week you could add on the speech to text, and it looks like a little mic with a headset. And it works pretty well when you have a mic with a headset. If you're just trying to talk into the Google Chromebook, it doesn't pick it up as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Barb?
And I'm looking at the Dragon Web extension, you know, because I haven't messed around with Chromebooks. I don't really know how this is going to play out, but you have to have Dragon, then a new version, and then you can use this Chrome extension it says manage web emails, fill in forms, create documents using Dragon Naturally Speaking version 13. So I don't know what that means. I mean, it gives you the directions, and because it is an extension, like at the district level, I don't know what that means to you guys, Gita-wise.
Well, since JP is our resident kind of software technology guru, maybe I'll have, maybe if it's okay with you, yes. JP, over the next couple of days, you can do a little bit of investigation. So the recommendations, Danny, that we can provide you are a little bit more concrete based on some of the comments that people have made. Are you raising your hand? Yeah.
I am. I just had a quick question. Does anybody have any experience with using CoWriter Universal on a Chromebook?
I don't think anybody has any experience because it's only been out about 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, if you decide to try it out, Annie, I would just ask that you let us know how we're doing. And I think one of the greatest parts about Echo is that half of you guys are on your computers and can kind of look up some pieces as we're going, and it's such a quickly evolving field that we're going to need all of our brains to figure out each one of these. So report on back to us, Annie. Mary Jo?
So I think we've done a lot about the writing, but we haven't done a lot about the reading part. And there are a couple programs that I know of looking, especially the concern I have is with that phonological processing issue from early on, that might look at more in-depth phonological processing. So there's two curriculums I know of. One's called Accessible Literacy Learning Reading Program, which I know we have here, that can be sent out, right?
Absolutely.
To have you take a look at it. And then there's also one called Literacy Lab that we have here that, again, trying to look at some of the, giving you more experience on those building block skills for decoding and reading. And then the other suggestion I have is about his spelling issues, because it sounds like spelling is such a huge issue for him. There is a spelling program called Spell Links, and we can send you the information about that, but it's has a lot of evidence-based research in it, and has some in fact, even it has a game played to assess their spelling, and so that the wizard puts up things and people says the word and the person tries to spell it, and then it analyzes it based on, is it a phonological issue, is it sight word problems, is it morphology, prefix, suffix problems, and then it has a spelling instruction that goes along with it, that based on where the areas of concern are, then intervention at those areas.
Thank you. Thanks, yeah.
Hey, Gail?
I'll get it.
Up the topic of further instruction, because this is one of those kids. He's right on the cusp of we've done instruction for a lot of years, but he probably can benefit from additional reading and phonological processing instruction. And at the same time, we're thinking about what kinds of assistive technology and accommodations might help him in the daily functioning when instruction's not being provided, for writing those 5-paragraph papers and things like that. Darcy mentioned the protocol for accommodations in reading assessment that is available for free on the Don Johnston website. It's commonly called the PAR, which is the acronym. And it does a really good job of helping to identify whether he would do better with having something read to him, whether he'd do better with reading it himself, or having a computer read the text that he needs to get out loud. It's basically a pretty practical exam. So if you haven't done something like that, it's not a standardized test, but it's a really good assessment that you can just download and use. It's sort of a time, 5th grade's often a time when you're just trying to figure out which accommodations work. And so for me, in the reading part, that's the big question, is would a computer reading to him his textbooks help? Because then you're into accessible instructional materials pretty quickly, and JP can help with that a lot.
Yes.
Great. Any other suggestions, or Casey? Ooh. You said here that you did a 6-day trial of Co-Writer Universal. It was awesome. My favorite word, being platform independent. Our district has PC, Mac, and a few Chromebooks. At the time they trialed, they had not released a universal part. Great. That's really neat. I mean, I think that, yeah, mean, that's why part of the reason why we ordered those Chromebooks is so that people could get on the same page and figure out what supports all of the kids can have access to. So thank you for putting that in there. And as we start to learn more about it, as you guys start to learn more about it, please share. Annie, do you have any, or Mary Beth, do you have any additional questions? One of the things that we will do is anybody who provided recommendations, if you'll email them to me, and over the next 2 days, 2 or 3 days, we'll go ahead and compile everything, send you an AT recommendations form directly back to Annie if you'd share with Mary Beth, and then let you know, I mean, that we can loan you many of the things that we talked about for the assessments if they're not you know, the PAR and the productivity profile, we can have access to those, and then Drag and Dictate and the literacy lab, and you guys can loan from us as well, Annie and Mary Beth, if that's of interest to you. So we'll make sure we include that on the AT recommendations form. But aside from that, do you have any questions or comments or?
No, I want to thank you all for helping out. You know, some of these are brand new to me, and so that'll be great. I'll be interested in seeing and trying them out with them, especially the spelling and the reading and literacy program, and then the PAR sounded good too, so that's great. Thank you so much.
Right. And then, of course, we'll ask you to do some follow-up with us as you try some of these pieces and do some of these assessments. You know, bring that information back to us and let us know what you kind of found out with the assessments, and maybe we can provide even some more specific recommendations. Or if you try some of the strategies, we welcome you to come back and let us know what's going on. JP?
I just want to thank Ann Bowers and Mary Beth as well, because although you might get a lot of recommendations, I think all of us really enjoy seeing these unique cases. And I do say that to educators, that bringing it to us is really good for us as we learn from you. And I know I'm not trying to sell you on
Absolutely.
it, but I like the cohesive thinking among the whole group. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward.
And I'll use that as a solicitation to say, keep bringing them. We've got a couple of new members who want to present, but really want to see some of the individuals who've been involved in this project present first. So, Casey, I think Casey, even though he's not there, had been interested in your team presenting. So we'd love to have you, and then, any additional cases that you guys want to bring to the table, we welcome it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week for some additional didactic training on low-tech tools for vision.